Hello to all my foodies out there. We are back with another recipe today. It is still really, really hot where I am. Right now it is about 8 o'clock in the morning and it is already in like the mid 70s. It's supposed to be like a high of 91 today. So I am still holding off on continuing with yesteryear. I know I had mentioned last week making a coffee cake if it was still really hot this week when I filmed my video. Um, I am not going to make the coffee cake today. I will make that eventually because it sounds really good and I do love coffee cake. Um, However, today we are doing something a little bit different. Kind of stepping away from the baking a little bit and going more into like regular cooking. I'm going to be making a mac and cheese today. Um, Mostly because I was planning on making the mac and cheese anyway. It sounded really good. We haven't had it for a while. This is our favorite mac and cheese to make. Usually, if we are making mac and cheese, it is usually this recipe. And I just kind of was like, well, if I'm going to make it anyway, why not share it with everybody? So the mac and cheese is actually out of one of the Gilmore Girls books that I have. It is Eat Like a Gilmore, the unofficial cookbook for Fans of Gilmore Girls by Kristi Carlson. Um, I do really like this cookbook. It is one of the first pop culture cookbooks that I ended up getting. It was a Christmas present quite a while ago now, actually. It's a Christmas present back in 2017, so almost 10 years ago now. Um, we've made several recipes out of this book, and I will cook my way through it eventually. But for now, we're just going to do the mac and cheese out of here. I did make this mac and cheese shortly after receiving this cookbook. Um, and we all loved it in my house. And we've tried other mac and cheese recipes since then, but none of them have quite been like this one. And this is the one that we always go back to, and typically the one that we make when we do make mac and cheese now. It is really easy to make. It doesn't really take a lot of ingredients. It's going to look like I'm using a lot of cheese in it, but it's not, at least not for the amount of mac and cheese that it makes, because it does make a lot. Um, we will usually get several meals out of one batch of this mac and cheese in our house, but it does depend on how many people are going to be in your house, how well you all like mac and cheese, and all of that too. Um, the episode I always associate with the mac and cheese from Gilmore Girls is either season 2 or 3. I can't quite remember. It's one of the episodes after Jess moves to Stars Hollow, and Jess and Paris all end up over at Rory's, and they're talking, they're eating, and just kind of hanging out and everything. And Jess had brought over a bunch of food from Luke's Diner. And one of the things that he had brought over was some mac and cheese, and Paris was so excited about the mac and cheese because it was a food that she typically did not get at home and everything. And so for me, making this mac and cheese, a lot of times I always think of how excited Paris was over being able to have mac and cheese. And I gotta say, I get just as excited as she does when I make it because it is amazing. So let's get started. All right, so for our mac and cheese, we've got some milk here. I've got Monterey Jack cheese, sharp cheddar cheese, and Velveeta cheese. For the cheeses, I do tend to mostly use the already pre-shredded stuff. Um, you can use it off the block if that's what you have, if that's what you like to use. I just tend to use the shredded stuff because it's a little bit easier, saves me steps since I don't have to shred it myself. Especially with the Velveeta shreds. These are fairly reasonably priced and definitely a lot cheaper than buying a block of Velveeta. So I definitely recommend using this if you are making this mac and cheese. Um, just because it is a little bit cheaper if you don't already have a block of Velveeta in your kitchen. If you do already have Velveeta in your kitchen, by all means, go ahead and use that. It's going to turn out just the same. We have used the black cheese before, and it's been just as good. We honestly couldn't tell much of a difference between using the black and the shredded cheese, but typically just use the shredded just because it is a little bit easier and a little bit quicker and just kind of cuts out a step. So I've got some flour here. I've got large elbow macaroni. So the original recipe did use cavatappi pasta, I think, like the corkscrew kind. And the first time I did make that, but ever since then we've used the elbow macaroni and it has been fine. Um, you could probably use whatever you like, but like I said, we typically use the large elbow macaroni. And then I've got some butter here. I do not use as much butter as the recipe calls for. I did cut it down a little bit, just because the couple extra tablespoons of butter that it calls for really wasn't necessary, I guess. Like, it typically called for 10 tablespoons, which is a stick of butter plus 2 extra. I got tired of basically having to cut off 2 tablespoons from a fresh stick of butter to get enough and just started using just the stick of butter in this, and it has been just fine. I don't miss it. Can't really tell the difference. So that is what I do use. If you do like that little bit of extra butter, by all means go for it. Like I said, it did call for a little bit extra in the recipe. It's just something that we have done and kind of changed over the years when we've made it, just because it was easier just to use a full stick and instead of the 10 tablespoons that it called for. But that's just us, just what we do. And then I do have a casserole dish here, which I do have greased, which we are going to put our mac and cheese in. It is a baked mac and cheese, so you do want something that can go in your oven. And I typically grease it. The recipe does not say to, but I do typically grease my dish just to kind of make it a little bit easier when you're scooping it out of there after it's done. So that is what we are using for our mac and cheese. Let's get started. Alright, so the first thing that we are going to do for our mac and cheese is cook our pasta. Just in a pot of water, like you normally cook pasta, till it's almost done. You don't want it too done because it is going to bake a little bit and cook some more in the oven, but you do want it cooked decently. So I've got my water going for my pasta. I will be back in a little bit after my water's boiling. Okay, so I've got my pasta going. We're gonna just let this cook a little bit. Like I said, you want it cooked pretty well. But also you want to keep in mind that it is going to cook a little bit in the oven when we put it in there to bake a little bit. I am going to let this go, and then after my pasta is done, I will be back. Alright, so I've got my pasta cooked. I've got half of it here in my casserole dish. We're going to use about half of our Monterey Jack cheese and just kind of sprinkle that up on top here. And then we're going to layer it with the rest of the pasta and then the rest of the Monterey Jack cheese. When I have that done, I will show you what it looks like. Alright, so I've got that finished. We're just going to let that sit here just like this for a little while, and we are going to get started with our cheese sauce. We're gonna pour over the top of this. I will use the same pan as I cook my macaroni in, just because it's a little easier, less dishes and whatnot. So let's get started. All right, so we are gonna start off by melting our butter. It shouldn't take too long for my butter to melt today because it is like really hot in here right now. But one thing when you are making the cheese sauce, definitely start with your heat down low, especially with these first couple steps, because if you burn it with this first couple steps, you're going to ruin the entire cheese sauce and you're going to start all over. So it's best to start on lower heat and then increase it if and as you need it. So we're going to just finish up with getting this all melted. It's going pretty good so far. This honestly is the trickiest part with let me rephrase that. The first two steps with this are the trickiest part of making the cheese sauce. Because you're basically going to make a roux, which is basically like a fat source, in this case butter and flour. If that burns, you're going to have to start all over, and it's a waste of ingredients, so please be careful, pay attention to what you're doing when you're making this. So, alright, so our butter is melted, and we're going to start in our flour, and it's definitely one of those things too, you want like everything already measured out, because once this is ready, you are going to have to move really quickly. So we got this like all stirred in. We're gonna get that all mixed in really good, nice. And then, for me, this is usually about as much as I cook my roux. It's a nice golden brown already. Um, see that? So we are going to add in our milk. And kind of stir this. You can use a whisk too if you like, whatever is easier, whatever you prefer. Now I am going to turn my heat up just a little bit. And we're going to cook this until it starts to get thick, and then we're going to add the cheddar and the Velveeta to it. When I get ready to add the cheddar and the Velveeta, I will be back. Alright, so I've added my cheeses to my pan here, and we're just going to stir this up and let that cheese melt. It's going to get nice and thick. After a bit, I do tend to stand over this and stir it quite a bit, like almost constantly, just because I don't want it to stick in my pan. I don't remember what the cookbook said. I suppose I could look, but I'm not. Anyway, but so yeah, I am just gonna keep stirring this until it is all melted and nice and thick. When it is done, I am going to pour this over my macaroni and pop it in the oven. So when this is all melted, I will be back. Alright, so this is pretty much done now. Still a little, I'm gonna let it cook a little bit because it's not quite fully melted, but it's getting there. As you can see, it got nice and thick. I'm just waiting for that last little bit of cheese to melt and have it be all nice and smooth. And then we are going to pour that on top of our macaroni and pop it in the oven. After I have this on my macaroni, I will be back. Alright, so I have this done. I've got the cheese sauce poured over. I'm going to pop this in the oven for about 15 minutes or so. And when it is finished, I will show you what it looks like. Alright, so I have my mac and cheese out of the oven. It's nice and golden around the edges, kind of bubbly. I'm going to let this cool just a little bit, just kind of set just a little bit. I'm going to get myself a dish to take to work. And I will be back with my final thoughts. Alright, so there's really not a lot for me to say about the mac and cheese. I love making it. It is super good. It is my favorite mac and cheese to have. It is really simple, just kind of a nice, simple, classic, basic mac and cheese. There's no extra ingredients or spices in it. Like, I know I've seen mac and cheese recipes out there that use like onions and garlic and mustard and all that stuff, and they're not bad, but this is just a nice, simple, classic comfort mac and cheese, I guess. It is really easy to make. It doesn't take long to make. It doesn't require a lot of ingredients that I like, which I like. It You can whip it up easily enough, and it's just kind of a nice meal to have if you don't know what else to have. Like, I know we've done that a lot of times when we're just kind of struggling to find something to eat. We'll make a batch of this mac and cheese and everything. We do make it for Thanksgiving every year as part of our Thanksgiving meal. And, it's just a really great mac and cheese. Like I said earlier, it does look like you're going to use a lot of cheese, but it does make a big casserole dish full, as you could see while I was making it. So really, it does not, when you're eating it, it does not taste like there's a ton of cheese in it. It's just right. If you have Eat Like a Gilmore, I definitely would recommend making this mac and cheese. It is out of all the recipes that I've tried from this book, which I've tried several, not a lot, definitely not all of them yet, but I have tried a decent amount of recipes from this book. The mac and cheese has got to be my favorite and probably the one that I've made the most. Honestly, I think I probably made this mac and cheese recipe more than any other recipe out of any of the other cookbooks that I have as well. It's actually gotten to the point where now when I make it, I usually don't pull out the cookbook because I know how to make it without looking at the recipe. And it is a simple enough recipe that you can do that after a while, because there really is not much to making it, which, I don't know. I like my mac and cheese is to be simple. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm all for fancy mac and cheese every once in a while, but mac and cheese should be easy to make, and I think that it should just have a nice basic ingredients like this, because it is a comfort food for a lot of people, and it's that simpleness, that basicness, that just a cheese sauce and macaroni is where I feel like where that comfort food comes from when it comes to mac and cheese. And the fancier it gets, the less of a comfort food it tends to be, at least in my opinion. You know, if you feel differently, please let me know. Please share with me what you think and why you like the fancier ones better. But for me, this classic simple mac and cheese recipe is always going to be the best. It's always going to be my favorite. Um, I am hoping that this heat wave breaks soon. It has been crazy hot for quite a while now here. So I'm hoping it wraps up. This is the hottest summer that I can remember in a long time. Like, it's been, I don't know if I ever remember having this hot of a summer for this long, but it is what it is. It is summer, and it is nice to have some warmer weather versus the cooler summers that we have been having where I'm at. But I am hoping that it cools down a little bit so I can get back to baking yesteryear, because I am really excited to try the recipes in that book. It's just been way too hot. It was even almost too hot to make the mac and cheese today, and that didn't take that long to make. So we will see where we are next week when I film my videos. And until then, good times, good food. Bye.